right, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us on America Unhinged Radio. I'm your host, the Cosmic Rodder, with a very special guest tonight. I'm super excited to have her on. I've been looking forward to this for a couple of months. I saw her doing the rounds and all these other cool shows on Twitter. But can you go ahead and introduce yourself for the audience? A quick little,
Yes.
I mean, you can't do it too quick because you've done so much, but let's go ahead and hear it.
My name is Maryam Henein. I originally hail from Montreal, Canada, but I was living in Chinafornia, aka California, and I've been an investigative journalist for about 28 years. And I'm also a functional medicine coach and consultant through the Institute of Functional Medicine. I'm best known for directing the beautiful film Vanishing of the Bees. And I'm about to drop a documentary in regards to George Floyd and the way in which he spent the last few hours of his life. I just say, I've been covering medical freedom since 2012. So I knew this Rona regime was on its way. And I escaped to Costa Rica, but came back thinking that we could vote a better someone who cared about the Constitution. Now just think it's all political theater.
No doubt. And we'll go ahead and share this screen right here. You have a Give, Send, Go. We want to help share and support. You are one of the most shadow banned people on Twitter. I know they have yet to reach out to you about this, but here it is right here. Help expose the George Floyd psyop. Everybody out there, go ahead and if you want to share anything about this before we share. Oh, it looks like the sizzle reel is right here. We could just
Yes, exactly.
we could just link in right there. That's why you're telling me that. I went to your full site to have it ready to go, but
That's nice. Thank you. Yeah, it's nice to show what we're asking money for because if people have no idea, but I raised $1 million to make an award-winning film that's been seen around the world and have been struggling due to my censorship, even though I've got the goods on an event that perhaps people have fatigue towards the George Floyd incident, but it was that incident that ushered in the color revolution, and people don't know half the story.
yeah.
So
Before we get into the George Floyd documentary, I have to ask you because I remember the Vanishing of the Bees documentary being like a force of nature when it came out for a little while. Then it went a little bit silent. Like, did you have any brush with kind of being forced under the radar then, or what do you think?
well, I was working for my first job was for MSNBC, and I wrote for mainstream publications. And of course, blowing the whistle on Bayer Crop Science, I got my first death threat then, but I was quite naive. So slowly and surely, the film was #1 on Netflix and it's been translated in 13 languages. It was definitely integral in raising the consciousness and awareness of the importance of the honeybees and our adulterated food supply. So I'm not quite sure. I think it's around the time I started also covering techno-fascism, which is a term that I popularized, and censorship in regards to Google and social media, having learned that Google was invested in the decade of vaccines. And about in 2018, 2019, with all the different updates, the algorithmic changes, we lost, when I say we, my company, honeycolony.com, which I built into $1 million company from scratch, was first attacked for being one of the first, literally in the online space, to sell CBD, liposomal beautiful CBD. And there's ties with big pharma and Bayer in regards to CBD. And then the medic update anyone that was kind of listed under the category your money, your life, paid the price. So let's say Dr. Mercola, for instance, and it was the beginning of the attack on health. And I call this health, HELLTH. But we don't have to go there. But yeah, I've been covering medical freedom since 2012, and so I left to Costa Rica, knowing this was going to happen, having covered for Dr. Sherry Tenpenny the 200,000 people that got mass for based on 7 cases of non-deadly measles in Samoa. 200,000 people in 30 days, and they literally went door to door. And of course, in October 2019 is when they introduced vaccine hesitancy. And so there's many of us that knew this was coming.
Man, you just dropped a lot right there. I'm trying to process all that. That's some scary stuff to think about. I got banned heavily trying to cover some of the former, Teodoros, the former head of the WHO in Africa, some of his, medical procedure related debacles alongst with his best friend William Gates. That was one of the first things to get me on the radar. Ever since then, my channel hasn't really been able to cover. It's crazy how they find the small guys. That's like what's really incredible.
Because the small guys aren't, people think that the big guys are real, but they're controlled opposition. And it's the people that do the real work. So we keep tabs on Maryam to see what she's up to, because I've also been one of the only who's given a lot of coverage to Charles Lieber, the nanotech king that's responsible for pioneering. So it's interesting who they allow, but oftentimes they're controlled opposition, and people just don't know that they're getting 70%, 80%, 90% truth. So there's a lot of shysters out there breaking in the money, selling fucking collagen.
It's funny. Snake oil salesmen have been around since the Rockefellers, like literally, like
the first one. Absolutely.
Let's go ahead and
the Rockefellers and the Flexner Report and the hijacking of our health.
Oh man, let's go ahead and start watching this. Go ahead and pause it at any moment, or give me a cue if you want to stop in and talk about this.
Well, let me just.
A lot of people. Yeah, go for it.
So this film is called The Real Timeline, and it's been a year and a half in process. It's to accompany a book. The book is not ready, so I wanted to see what started at 7:30 and ended at 9:30, and to illustrate a few chapters in the book. And I decided to make a documentary based on everything that I know about this PSYOP. So with that, we can begin. And then if your audience, if anyone has questions, or if you do, I'm sure there'll be tons of, interest.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Oh, John Arch says, oh, so waiting on the book. We just discussed this prior, but there's a movie supporting the book, right? The book is first. This movie is made to follow, amplify.
The book is called George Floyd, A Multi-Layered PSYOP Examined. And, I have about 500 pages written, but I'm not finished because real investigations take time, and real prose and writing takes time. Unfortunately, we're living in a world where there's just McJustice and just us. So yes, this is really an extension of the book, but the book will not be ready until April or May for the 3rd anniversary, depending on, I'm doing my best, but also have a weekly show. I help run my company, and also been working on this movie. And I like I prefaced, I've raised $1 million to make Vanishing of the Bees, and yet because of the censorship, I've been struggling to just cover the costs and cover the cost for the editor and all the footage that I purchased. So we can jump into it and then take it from there.
No doubt. Let's do it. Let's check it out.
Will you enlarge the screen?
Let me see.
Sorry, you can just down there. There's a you can do full on the actual.
Oh, on this I can do full screen somewhere. This gives me a picture-in-picture
okay.
thing.
Sorry, what's the other one?
Or I could zoom in.
But what you did is fine. I'm sorry, that's fine. I just
like that?
wanted people to see it bigger. That's sure.
I think let's just go to the sizzle reel on your real site.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Okay.
That's the same thing, right?
Yes, yes.
All right. Let's do that. Should be playing now. It's just what's happening. It will work. Trust me.
It should work, or else there's something wrong with my site.
Yeah, my internet just a refresh helps.
Playing? Okay, there we go.
Yeah, can you hear it?
Yes.
Freedom of speech, folks. Don't touch him. I got this all on camera. Watch out. Don't touch me.
Third precinct is up in flames.
We begin with breaking news in South Minneapolis.
Caught on tape, a black man pinned to the ground, later dying after a white officer kneeled on his neck.
It started with a report of a forgery in progress and ended with Floyd's death.
The situation has become volatile at the 3rd Police Precinct tonight.
As police officers and protesters clash over a man's death.
Miles from Minneapolis, anger, frustration pouring into the streets of America.
I can't breathe!
It all stems from this video.
I want to pause it and ask you, like, there's one burning question. I follow this one Twitter account called @Juladora, and she's from northern Minnesota, and she's been a professor in the universities for a long time. She has this theory that ever since the 60s, this whole area used as like a counterpoint or an ignition for some super crazy like social justice movements. The Fondo Castile thing. I think Vatican II, there's some prominent Marxist bishops up in Minnesota that were also involved. But if you look at this like 5 or 10 mile street, you know, in Minnesota, you can find all these events kind of line up. I just think it's so ironic that Minnesota, Waukesha, Great Lakes region went up in flames.
It's full of fuckery and
full of what?
It's full of fuckery. And they call it Murderopolis.
Yeah, I got it.
And I interviewed a Black Panther who said it's like Mordor. So yeah, and this thrust to incite a racial war is a long time tactic. And this was the event that ushered in a color revolution. So they definitely want to sow discord between black and white, but this case had nothing to do with race. That's the irony.
Yeah, let's go ahead and
what we saw was he can be heard on the video saying, "I can't breathe."
Police officers involved have all been terminated.
It's in your hands. You can ask Mr. Adam what I mean.
Who is Mr. Adam?
Movie.
Who's this Mr. Adam?
You'll have
Damn
to
it. Oh, it's such a good teaser. I watched a lot of this, but like you picked up on some things right there, especially you highlighted the script.
If you can play it its entirety so people can get into it, and then if that's okay.
I can't breathe.
You got it.
That's That's my ex. He got a thing going on. I'm telling you about the police. He have problems. Do not move, not one time, bro.
He's off track or no?
But yeah, bro, go back in the store. What happened to him? Fucked up. All right. They fucked up.
You took your ID?
Yeah.
So what happened? More drama at Cup Foods?
Yeah, it was just a forgery report. The person that had given him a fake bill, we went over there and yeah.
It's a bunch of stuff going on. That boy Jeff became $1 billion dating hoe.
The media purposely left a lot on the proverbial cutting room floor in order to manipulate your emotions and perceptions of this event, manufacture a race war, and burn the country down. My aim was simple: take all the footage and place it back in chronological order to capture a more complete, nuanced picture of reality, expose the slew of inconsistencies in the official narrative, and blow the lid off this saga. Let's begin. The prostitutes and the parrots told us that George Perry Floyd and Maurice Lester Hall met at Cup Foods coincidentally. Not true. The Dragon Walk footage is about 24 minutes off, meaning they arrived together at approximately 7:33. Interestingly, before stepping into Cup Foods, the two look out onto Chicago Street as though they're scouting the area. George, Maurice, and Shawanda spend about 22 minutes in the store, arguably loitering or plotting something. X marks the spot. You can see here that George has a lot of money on him. Sylvia, the actual owner of the Mercedes-Benz, lent George her car that day and also asked him to buy charcoal and fluid. According to Maurice, she wanted pills. Maurice comes into frame. He was speaking to Mr. Adam, who we'll meet later. George is looking through his pockets, and Maurice can be seen taking a bill from George. Then they both exit the store before George returns and continues to fuddle around. Shawanda Renee Hill arrives. Shawanda is also a convicted felon for theft, disorderly conduct, falsely using someone's name, prostitution, stalking. Off camera, George and Shawanda are arguably talking to Mr. Adam. Shawanda said she'd gone to Cup to fix her cell phone. Maurice returns into the store where he says he met Shawanda for the first time. By the way, that was George and Maurice's second time at Cup that day. One of the four owners of Cup Foods told me that Maurice had tried to buy an iPad with fake money.
You saw that 20? I do, and they had a lot more with them too, just so you know.
All right. You have all of them?
No, we only confiscated one.
Only confiscated the one?
No, actually, he bought something with it too from one of my employees. So one employee cut it, and then the other person that was with him, so they both had counterfeits. The gentleman with the hat and the big guy.
They rejected the funds, but somehow he was let back into the store with absolutely no issues. Nobody called the cops on Maurice. Here, you can see him with a wad of money. Maurice would tell me himself that he had $7,000 of supposedly real cash on him that he used to buy an iPad. No one called the police on Maurice. Why? This makes zero sense. George continues to just hang around. He's dancing and acting goofy, which his friends say was supposedly part of his personality. Eventually, he goes around the corner to buy some smokes. Here you see Chris Martin holding the $20 bill to the light before he exits at almost 7:46 p.m. In never-before-seen footage, George is dancing across the street back to the Benz he doesn't own. Shawanda follows, and eventually so does Maurice. Here, George was supposedly catching up with Shawanda, making eye contact through the rearview mirror, which is what Maurice told me. According to him, George could not find the key fob, which is why they didn't leave the scene right away. Were they supposedly chilling? Now George exits to take a hit off a pipe. That's strange because he had his own on him. In fact, Lane would forget the pipe on top of the car. George then chucks a banana peel before going back in. Don't slip on the psyop. Here's where things get a bit fuzzy. The story goes that while in the car, George took 2 Percocet and had a power snooze, and that Maurice and Shawanda could not wake him up. But Maurice would later tell me that wasn't true. In fact, Maurice goes as far as to say that his bro didn't even do drugs that day, which is kind of hard to believe considering the fatal amounts of fentanyl in his system. Notice here, Chris Martin goes directly to Maurice. It's Mr. Adam who tells them to go out there again. This second time, little Nabil, who is Mr. Adam's nephew, kind of tries to speak to George. Is Maurice in charge? Maurice takes a 20 that would also turn out to be fake, tears it up, and throws it on the ground. It's now almost 8 p.m. The actual 911 call and the identity of the caller were never released. That's because there's a cover-up, but more on that later. There's only a transcript that was released to the public, so I took it upon myself to recreate it for you.
911. What's the address of the emergency?
This is 3759 Chicago Avenue.
How can I help you?
Someone came into our store and gave us fake bills, and we realized before he left the store, and we ran back outside and they were sitting in the car. We tell them to give us their phone, put their thing back and everything. He was also drunk and everything, in return to give us our cigarettes back so he can go home. And he doesn't want to do that. And he's sitting on his car because he's awfully drunk and he's not in control of himself.
Okay, what type of vehicle does he have?
And he's got a vehicle that is, one sec, let me see if I can see the license, the driver's license.
I have questions and answers after this. So first off, I have to ask, did he ingest any drugs this day, or do you think there's some serious evidence that he I don't know. I don't even know how to approach some of these questions. Like, it kind of shook a lot of what we thought we knew already. We all thought he chewed up a speedball, probably died, and then had the knee on the neck. You know, can you hint at what you're getting at here a little?
I don't know what's your question?
My question
drugs
is, yeah, so there were drugs in his system that's obvious that apparently was in the autopsy, but now we're having some doubt here in the last part of that clip.
Why do you have doubt?
Well, I thought I heard somebody mention, one of his friends said that he was sober that day, right? Whereas the medical reports just claim that he was full.
Maurice says that, but Maurice is the one who gave him the drugs. He's not going to tell you.
Yeah, that's true.
He's not going to tell you that he gave his friend drugs that are made by the Mexican cartel, Sinaloa to be specific, ravishing Americans, #1 killer.
Yeah.
Fentanyl with the help of China. So he's not going to tell you that, because that would, or me that, or maybe even himself that.
Yeah, good point. Was there any?
Sorry, to answer the person's question, we don't know whether he popped Percocet. Percocet is not picked up in the autopsy. When Lane stops him, we didn't know whether it was gum in his mouth. There was a pack of gum in the car, or whether he swallowed fentanyl then. However, the medical examiner, Andrew Baker, he was roasted, pressured, threatened, And so I would venture to say that his autopsy report was real. That's when they brought in Michael Baden, the Hollywood pathologist, that never even produced an official report. So I've spent thousands of hours. I've applied for FOIA and looked under every nook and cranny and purchased all of this footage so that I could see it. And by listening and paying attention to details, something that nobody does anymore in this age of mediocrity, and that I was able to glean a lot. And because there's no real journalists that have looked into this, only prostitutes and parrots, that it's gone under the radar because of the gaslighting has been so immense. So did he take drugs? Pretty much, yes, he took drugs.
Was there anything unusual, in your opinion, through what you've uncovered about the way he was physically handled that day? Can we just put that to bed a little bit? There's so much made about the knee on the neck, revisions of police procedures, defunding the police, all from a knee on a neck for 8 minutes. Everything that I've known about mixed martial arts, watching on TV, shows that most likely was not the sole cause of death. Did you find any physical evidence in your reporting that suggests that could be a possibility?
It's not my evidence. There's no literal asphyxiation, no bruising, but in this new world that we live in, you can get choked with absolutely no bruising or evidence. And also there's camera perspective bias, and they emphasize believe your eyes because the people have forgotten in Hollywood movie magic. So they focused on that, but I say Obi-Wan Kenobi said, do not believe your eyes, for they will deceive you. Now, if he didn't take all those drugs, would he have died? There's no justification as to why Derek continued to put his knee on the neck. I'm not, there are real cases of police brutality and there are real cases of racism, but this is not one of them. And so if you think about in the trial, the prosecution literally scrubbed the image. I have it. It was an exhibit where they show the same move, putting the knee on the neck. And of course, there's a conspiracy theorists who shared the similar neck constraints the same day, I believe in Madrid, I believe in Paris. There's that, now it's been circulated, that meme. And nobody really covered the federal trial. There wasn't a lot of coverage of the federal trial of the 3 officers who were found guilty of not doing enough. And during that trial, which I covered, it was almost as though the manual was under scrutiny and was on the stand.
I have my good friend Mars Bars here chiming in about evidence of being a paid informant. That's kind of a very vague, very vague.
I don't know what it means exactly.
Yeah.
George could have been an informant. I don't know about the paid part, but Alexander Kang, who's Black, by the way, filed a motion via Thomas Plunkett to look at any evidence suggesting that George, who was arrested almost exactly to the year in May, was part of an undercover sting operation. And so, yes, there is a very good chance that he possibly was an informant. I go into that in the book. Again, there's so much that I could do in this documentary because it's really focusing on the timeline. Yeah, the cops were meant to be thrown under the bus, and people could say, well, is this even real? Regardless, it's had a very real impact, as it's 3,000 bills have been taken into consideration for changing legislation in regards to duty to intervene. Because despite, for instance, the fact that Thomas Lane did compressions on George, he still was found guilty of basically not doing enough. So he was expected to say, fuck you, FTO, field training officer, get out of the way, even though I'm only on the 5th day of my job. And that is preposterous. As a result of this defund the police, any good cop has left. Homicide has only doubled in Minneapolis. Nothing, it's not addressed the real instances of brutality or the real instances of racism. But there's a philosopher called Rene Girard who talks about a sacrificial lamb. And it's like, it's a ritual where you infuse, just like with Jesus, right? He died for our sins and somehow it absolves us of our guilt. And the same thing with George, that somehow the family getting $27 million, which is just the civil suit, let alone all the GoFundMe. So that in itself are the people who have survived cases of real police brutality. Will they get awarded any money from Benjamin Crump? Yeah, it's total
No
ritual.
way.
It's total ritual. Also, when you think about the fact that literally the next day we bring in the mask mandates and we're all talking about I can't breathe while you're wearing your fucking face diaper and you can't breathe.
And the black cube, right? The black square. That was almost instantaneous too for your Instagram profile.
Oh yes, I didn't. Oh yeah, someone brought that up yesterday. I didn't experience that. I was in the jungle when this occurred, and it's by accident that I fell into this. I will blame Zach for he's the Google whistleblower who asked me to choke him. It's like Mimi's my nickname. Mimi, can you come and choke me? We're doing the George Floyd challenge. And I said, who's George Floyd? Imagine asking that today. Imagine anyone saying, who's George Floyd? When in Kenya, they know about George Floyd.
That's insane. Canis has a good question here. What do we know about the counterfeit bills? Any information on where
Yes, I addressed that in the movie. And so I don't want to spoil everything. And I definitely addressed it in the book as well. It's obviously central. If anyone gave a shit about this guy's Black life, you would be looking at the fake money and the fake drugs. So I do address that. The film will be coming out January 15th, which is MLK, and then 3 days later, which I didn't know at the time, is the oral appeal of Derek Chauvin, which will be live streamed to the world. So
no way.
Yeah, George Floyd was just trending on Twitter 2 days ago, and his name is uttered literally every single day somewhere. And they bring up his name, and you can imagine they do not want this to come out. So that's why I need support. I'm just one person, and luckily I'm collaborating with Sean Hibbler, who is a fantastic, gifted editor and helped me produce this. And I'm very grateful for the Hibbler. But it's, usually have a big crew. It's same thing with Vanishing of the Bees is the name of the bee movie. It was basically me and the co-director. We did everything. We had executive producers. But again, this has been, you would think this chick, this real investigative journalist has the goods on the event that ushered in the color revolution. You'd think I'd have a little bit more support. So it's really we the people, because I've been accused of being a white supremacist and a racist. And if you haven't noticed, I'm a little brown. So to have people that are probably whiter than me telling me that I'm a racist in places where I used to frequent as a respected filmmaker. So there was another place I was looking for a distributor before I landed my Movies Plus, which will be distributing the movie. And they said, oh, we don't do conspiracy theories. Oh yeah, motherfucker. Bring it on. Like, you haven't done any research on this, and yet I'm the conspiracy theorist. It's so disgusting.
Yeah, I totally relate. I can't tell you how many times I've been called a white supremacist or a Nazi for my little, videos I've done or little protests I show up at. It's really,
it's all they've got.
Yeah, that's the last thing. Let me see. Oh, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned that you had some kind of cease and desist from a lawyer regarding the name of George.
I didn't get to cease and desist.
No.
Yeah, I got threatened by an attorney. So I have in front of me a claim by someone who says, and this again, this is like nothing what I have when I'm sitting on. This person claims that they're the natural father of George Floyd, and there was a disallowance claim. And so I called several times to the attorney and I asked for context. So after over several months of no responses, I left a message the other day and I said, I've been commissioned to write a book and I worked for MSNBC, which is true. And I got a call right away. And she said, it's in your best interest to speak to me. And basically said that in the United States of America, I'm not allowed to write about George Floyd because there's IP interests, because they've trademarked his name. They've trademarked his name to sell fucking keychains, baseball hats, linens. But you guys are going to tell me that I'm profiting on George Floyd?
Is there a corporation behind this, like listed, or is this just like a alleged father?
George Floyd IP Holdings by. So this is an attorney that gave me a veiled threat. And I said, you can't, I can't write a book. Oh, let me get this on record. So I walked towards my office. She goes, I don't give you permission to record it. So I said, okay, well, let me get a pen. And she hung up on me. So, in the movie, which is called The Real Timeline, we purposely didn't use George Floyd's name so that we don't get attacked by a communist America to prevent us from speaking the truth. And so in my book, I bring all the receipts, and anyone that wants to challenge me, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm an actual investigative journalist. But yet we gave a Pulitzer Prize to Darnella Frazier, the chick that films this. She got a Pulitzer Prize. Meryl Streep gave her a personal thank you. She was fucking compared to Scorsese. Could you imagine? She won a Pulitzer Prize and she raised $700,000. And I'm struggling to raise $15,000 to make this film. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is absolutely insane. What's going on? So I told you I'll let you go, in the 45 minute to the hour range. For the last, 5 minutes or so, can you tell us about your websites, several of the projects you're doing? I know you're going to be speaking at Anarchapulco pretty soon. That's pretty exciting. Can you just highlight some things?
I will be speaking about how I reversed an autoimmune condition, lupus, and I will be turning 50 in a couple weeks. So to tell people that I've literally learned how to walk again after being hit by an SUV and dragged 50 feet and then being sprayed by chemicals after making Vanishing of the Bees in the Dominican Republic. So I have an ebook, and there's other things I'd rather talk about, like Charles Lieber, nanotech, and 5G. And how to I have a presentation called How to Deconstruct a PSYOP, which I did on the virtual version of the festival. So that's February. If people want to join, there's such a great lineup. Berwick and Andy Kaufman and Carrie Madej. Microaggressions, just an awesome lineup. So I'll be going to that, and I'm very excited. What else? You can find my work on MaryamHenein.com. I have a weekly show that drops on Fridays at 11. I just dropped an interview with investigative journalist George Webb. And I look forward to finishing up this movie so that I can go back to covering medical freedom and geeking out in functional medicine and also biohacking, because I believe in optimizing our biology, not eradicating our immune system.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah, let's go ahead and share your GoFundMe one more time.
It's not a GoFundMe. GoFundMe is
Give, Send, Go. Sorry, that's horrible. GoFundMe, I know.
It's a compromised platform that I've been banned on since 2018 that is getting funding from Accel Partners, which is also corrupt. They're all corrupt. Most things are corrupt. So it's unfortunate. We have to really develop discernment, but just to give a little recap, I've been persecuted by the government. The government, FDA, FTC, DOJ has come after me as part of Operation Quack Hack for selling silver and vitamin C on Honey Colony. I've lost my Twitter, my YouTube, my Instacart, my Airbnb, my Amazon, my Chase account. I'm not able to be tagged on Instagram. And I know that now it's normalized, but I must be doing something fucking right. So,
Right on.
it's
How
really
do you?
bad. Sorry.
No, I'm just asking. What do you do exactly on the site honeycolony.com?
Honeycolony.com. Well, we've separated the magazine, and that will be launching Hive Wisdom, where we have more than 1,500 hard-hitting articles in regards to health and wellness. And Honey Colony is a marketplace where we look to optimize people's health. I work with people now. I've developed a protocol on how to detox from this gene therapy. And I also write for Dr. Sherry Tenpenny. So we're about to publish part 10, in which I break down what exactly this is doing in the body. Of course, we're in uncharted territory, but I look at the mRNA, at the graphene, at the spike, at the PEG, to explain to people what is going on, even though now there's a silent, blatant culling, but yet people don't see the truth somehow. I don't know how, but
Yeah.
yeah.
The very last thing.
Yes.
No, just the very last thing. What is one thing you want people to take with them before they go watch your movie coming out, the George Floyd timeline? What's one thing you want to leave them with?
Well, I'd like to leave people with, which is nothing to do with the film, just that this is the test, and a test of our faith, and that I encourage people to cultivate self-awareness and look at their own shadow and take responsibility for their lives instead of blaming others. Now, of course, there's a lot of victimization and hell happening, but it's not what you do with, it's not what happens to you, but what you do with what happens to you. And so friends, family, love, health are the most important things in this world. Life is very short. They've made it shorter with their hijacking of their Rona regime. And it's just important to keep things in perspective and develop your intuition and develop your discernment. As far as the timeline, I'm excited to share it with the world. I know that it's explosive, and I'm excited to share this news and hope that nobody stands in my way.
Right on. Thank you so
I
much.
don't have my Twitter account back. Fuck Elon.
Yeah.
I've only appealed 10 times.
He's got a few little favorites right now. We've seen this on my channel. We've been talking a lot of shit the last couple of days.
Also, I want to say that when you drop Twitter files, let's cherry pick, let's give it to Barry Weiss and Matt Taibbi. You dump those files and you let people take a look at the truth.
That's right.
I promise you, there's other people who will see things that these people who are establishment. Barry Weiss came from the New York Times, so it's all show. It's all show. You don't decide like, I don't like Alex Jones. That's not the fucking way it works, buddy. That's not the way. It's not the way it works with First Amendment, whether you like it or not. So that in itself should show this is bullshit. You're gonna look up and be a fanboy to the person who's developing neural lace.
Yeah, what a joke. I'd love to have you on again sometime, Maryam.
Happy New Year, everybody. Let's make 2023 better than 2022. And
let's put tyranny in the past forever somehow. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I really, we're doing small things on this channel, and I'm just blessed that you came on here.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.